We've seen how the report wizard can be used to create reports very, very quickly with minimal need for having to understand how a report structure works. Now, one step of the wizard we sort of skipped over was the ability to group our reports. This is extremely useful when you're dealing with a great mass of data. So let's look at creating a report with grouping. So we go to Create as before, into the Report section and the Report Wizard. We're going to use one of our queries, which is the high income customers. So these are customers in the high income bracket. And I'd like to see on the report their first name, their last name, their email address, and their country region name. So that's the name of the country that they live in, and then the total purchase YTD. Next, this is the stage we did not use before, the grouping. Now what grouping will do is instead of just sorting the data by a particular field, we can choose a field from our data and ask it to be grouped, so it will be lumped together. So if I were to take my country region name and use the little arrow here to group by the country region name, you can see even in the preview you get an idea of how that will work. We will get the country region name and then the first name, last name, email address, total purchase, YTD for everybody in each country. So each country will be broken down into separate sections. Now once you choose grouping, we have grouping options that allow you to group not on the value in the field, but perhaps the first couple of letters in the field. We're going to leave ours as normal because we want each country to be a unique group. That's okay. Next, what about any sorting? Now this sorting is only within the group. The groups will have each of the unique countries in our data list in alphabetical order. So likely it would have Africa or Australia first. But within that group, so within each country, I can then sort the rest of the data. So let's go for last name and first name. Fairly common sort. The other additional extra you get when you choose grouping is this summary options box, which wasn't there when we had a normal report. Inside the summary options, I'm able to add a mathematical function for any of the numeric fields I've chosen. I've only chosen total purchase YTD, but I could ask Access to sum that up for the detail and the summary. So I'm going to get a total YTD for each country. So that way I can see which country is effectively spending the most with us. And then I can allocate my marketing resources appropriately. I can even ask it to calculate a percent of the total for the sums. So that way I would get a percentage of the total sales for a particular country. We will leave that out for the moment, but we're going to have the sum of the total. You can have all four of these ticked and you'll get 4 mathematical values. Okay, next, because I've again chosen grouping, I have a number of layout options that are slightly different from before. I have stepped, and you can see in the preview how that will work. There's the country name, and then the data's stepped in, or block, or outline. I think I will stick with block. Portrait or landscape? Well, I think if you take the country out of the list, because that's going to be a heading, we only have 4 fields, so that should fit portrait. But I will leave the tick in that says fit on the width of the page. Next, query high income customers. Well, that becomes RPT, high income customers. Let's preview the report and finish. Now you can see that the preview doesn't quite live up to what we were expecting. The Australia is grouped and then they're sorted by the name of the Australians. But because it's putting Australia in the sheet of the data, there's not then quite enough room for the email address and purchase YTD. Well, in fact, there is, because we could squash these other 2 fields up much, much closer. But the wizard hasn't managed to do that for us. So there will be a little bit of work to be done here in the design. And then we scroll through, and as soon as we finish the Australians, we should hit the next country. There we go, Canada. There's the summary for Australia, 1008 records, summed up. And again, it's not left enough room for the field. So therefore we cannot see the actual value. So there's some work here to be done in the design to rejig, reorganize the widths of each of those fields and sort things out. Now one way we could do this is to go into design, and we'll look at that shortly, or we could rerun the wizard. So if I close print preview and close the report, go back to create report wizard. I want the same query, the same fields, group on the country region name, sort, chosen the middle name there, not the last name in my hurry, so I can take the middle name out and put the last name in. Sort on the country, last name, first name. Let's get it to sum the total purchase YTD. Next. Let's stay with stepped rather than block. Next. Report. High income customers version 2. Finish. Although it's done the step, it's still left all that extra space for the country. But that will be easier to resolve in the design. So we find that the wizard is somewhat a little lacking when it comes to doing grouped reports. It will do the mechanics for us, but the layout falls down. We will, however, be looking at how to edit the layout of a report so we can get the wizard to do the groundwork and then we just do a little bit of tidying up. So that's grouping in an Access report using the wizard to do the mechanical part before we then proceed to do the editing of the layout.